Eliza Fields should have been celebrating her company's biggest deal yet, but instead, she was sitting in a dark room, facing the man she trusted most, Lucas Carter, the billionaire who had just whispered, "Pretend I'm your dad." But what happened next? It shocked her to the core, and it would change everything she thought she knew about trust, betrayal, and the true cost of ambition. Everything Eliza had worked for, everything she believed in, was about to unravel. Because one decision, one dangerous choice, would lead her straight into the heart of a conspiracy that was far bigger than she ever imagined. But let me take you back to the moment everything changed. 6 weeks ago, things were different. Eliza was on top of the world, but that was before the secrets came to light. Before she made the choice that would lead her here, to this very moment. Before we dive deeper into the shocking twists ahead, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping reveal. And comment below, what would you have done in Eliza's shoes? Let me know where you're watching from and what you think is coming next. The gala had been a success, at least from the outside. Eliza stood at the edge of the room, glass of champagne in hand, surveying the crowd. The hum of conversation filled the air, but her mind was elsewhere, on the deal that could make or break her company. She had worked tirelessly for this moment, pushed through every obstacle, and yet there was a part of her that couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe it was the way the investors had looked at her during their last meeting, or the way Lucas Carter, always so confident, had been distant tonight. And then there he was, Lucas Carter, billionaire, visionary. And now, for some inexplicable reason, her greatest uncertainty. He leaned in, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Pretend I'm your dad." Her heart skipped a beat. A shiver ran down her spine. What could he possibly mean? And why, after everything they had been through, after all the business meetings, the late-night calls, was he asking her this now? What did he know? She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a slow breath, trying to regain her composure. There was a part of her that wanted to laugh it off, to dismiss the absurdity of it. But another part, the part she'd been ignoring for months, felt a rising sense of dread. Eliza's mind raced. What did he want from her? Why this now? The whispers of his past, the rumors that had followed him for years, seemed to dance around the edges of her thoughts. But there was something more to it, something in the way he stood there watching her. She had always been in control, always had a plan. But this was different. This was Lucas Carter, offering her something she couldn't understand, something that felt both dangerous and tempting at the same time. But as she turned to walk away, something stopped her. A voice in the back of her mind, louder than the noise of the party, whispered one word. Why? Why had Lucas come to her, and why did she feel like the weight of her entire future was hanging in the balance? A small envelope, no words, just the weight of it, pressing against her palm. Inside? She had no idea. But Eliza knew. She couldn't walk away now. Not without knowing what was at stake, not without seeing where this twisted game was leading. This was the moment everything changed. She couldn't go back. She could only move forward. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that this envelope would be the key to a door she was not ready to open. But that was just the beginning. 6 weeks later, Eliza would wish she had never picked up that envelope. The days following that night felt like a blur. Eliza's mind was consumed with the envelope, the words Lucas had whispered, and the cryptic promise that hung in the air. Her company was in turmoil, and yet, her thoughts kept returning to him. She'd barely managed to focus on the work in front of her. Emails piled up. The merger was teetering on the edge of collapse, and her team needed her more than ever. But it was impossible to ignore the invitation she had received. Lucas's invitation to his private estate. She had told herself she wouldn't go, but the thought of refusing him felt like a risk she couldn't afford. The words were simple. "I'll be expecting you tomorrow at noon. Don't make me wait." The message was clear, direct, and left no room for hesitation. The drive there was unsettling, silent and suffocating, the weight of the unknown pressing down on her chest. She told herself it was just a meeting, just a final step in securing the deal. But somewhere deep inside, she knew it was more than that. The invitation felt like a summons, one that carried the promise of a future she couldn't quite see. Lucas's estate was as imposing as the man himself, sleek, modern, and utterly isolated. There was no sign of warmth, no sense of home, only the sharp lines of the architecture, the sterile beauty of the place, as if designed to intimidate and control. She was met by a butler, whose eyes seemed to measure her every step as he led her inside. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that felt as if the walls were listening. And in that silence, she realized just how alone she felt. Lucas stood by the fire, his back to her. As she entered the room, he didn't turn to greet her. Instead, he simply spoke, his voice smooth and commanding. "Eliza, I trust you're well. I've been waiting for you." She didn't know how to respond. His calm demeanor only made the tension between them more palpable. She wanted to demand answers, to ask why he had summoned her here. But a part of her feared that if she spoke too soon, it might shatter the fragile control she had over this situation. Lucas finally turned, his eyes locking onto hers. There was a certain coldness to them, something detached, yet still deeply unsettling. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing toward the plush leather chairs before the fireplace. "We need to talk." The next few minutes were a blur of words, business talk, proposals, strategies, but in the back of her mind, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about the deal. It was something deeper, something that Lucas wasn't telling her. Then, without warning, he dropped the bombshell. "I think you're ready," he said, his voice low. "You've been playing the game for a while now, but the real test is about to begin. And I need you to understand, this isn't just business anymore. This is personal." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Her throat tightened. Was this a warning? A challenge? Or had she just walked into something far bigger than she could ever imagine? He didn't need to say anything more. The file was the answer. It was everything she feared and more. Inside that folder was a world of secrets, secrets that could destroy everything she'd built. And it was all tied to Lucas. Eliza's hand hovered over the folder, the weight of her next decision pressing down on her. She could walk away, cut ties with Lucas, and forget the whole thing. But something inside her urged her forward, toward the unknown. Her fingers brushed the edge of the folder, and in that moment, Eliza knew that her life was no longer just about business. It was about survival, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for the game Lucas had just invited her into. In the days that followed, Eliza couldn't escape the weight of the conversation at Lucas's estate. It lingered in her mind, wrapping around her thoughts like a dark cloud that refused to dissipate. Despite the chaos at work, despite the deal she had to secure to save her company, something kept drawing her back to the folder he had given her, the one she hadn't opened. But the moment she sat down at her desk, the weight of her responsibilities came crashing down. The merger was falling apart. Her investors were getting cold feet, and the clock was ticking. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Each notification another reminder that everything was spiraling. The first page was a chilling summary of the people who stood to gain from her failure. She skimmed the notes, names, timelines, financial transactions that didn't add up, and then, at the bottom of the page, a note that sent a cold shiver down her spine. Trust no one. Eliza had always prided herself on being a realist. She knew the world was full of liars and manipulators. But this felt different. She wasn't just facing a hostile business environment. She was caught in something far darker. And Lucas was at the center of it. A week had passed since their last meeting. Eliza hadn't been able to shake the feeling that Lucas had been watching her, studying her, like she was part of a game he was playing. But tonight, as they sat across from each other at the dinner table, the air between them felt thick with unspoken words. "You've been busy, Eliza, but you've been avoiding me." The way he said her name sent a chill down her spine. There was no malice in his voice, just a calm acknowledgement of her distance. But Eliza could feel the pressure in the air. She had to make a choice. Was she going to continue to play the game, or was she going to walk away? She didn't want to admit it, but there was a part of her that couldn't walk away. Not yet. The pull toward Lucas, his intellect, his power, his confidence, was magnetic, but she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something more was going on. "You're still wondering if you can trust me, aren't you? Let me make it easy for you. You have every right to doubt me." Eliza didn't know how to respond. His words hit too close to home. For the first time, she saw something in Lucas that wasn't just the billionaire business tycoon. She saw a man who was, in some ways, just as trapped as she was. He wasn't the man she thought he was, but she couldn't ignore the connection. Something about him resonated deep inside her. She was starting to understand. This wasn't just about business. It was personal. For both of them. "I know what you're thinking, and I know you've been looking for a way out. But Eliza, you're already too far in. The question now is, what will you do with the power you've been given?" The words hung in the air, leaving her speechless. Power? Had she been given power, or had it been taken from her without her realizing? Was it possible that Lucas had manipulated her from the beginning? Eliza wasn't sure what she was feeling. Anger, fear, or something far more complicated. But she couldn't stay in the dark any longer. She had to make a choice. Either trust Lucas and play along with whatever game he was orchestrating, or walk away before it was too late. But just as she was about to speak, the door to the restaurant opened. A familiar face entered the room, someone she hadn't expected to see, and as they locked eyes, Eliza felt the ground beneath her feet shift. Eliza had never been one to take risks. Her entire life, she had meticulously planned every move, every decision. But that night, something in the air changed. The conversation with Lucas was still swirling in her mind, his words echoing through the silence of her thoughts. "You're already too far in." Had he been manipulating her from the start? Or was she just as guilty for letting herself be drawn in? The merger, the company's future, all of it seemed so small in comparison to the looming questions about Lucas. She should have walked away, should have stuck to her plan. But now, the more she thought about it, the more she realized there was no going back. Not anymore. "Eliza." His voice was a familiar comfort, yet it sent a chill down her spine. She could feel the pull again, that strange magnetism between them, but it was no longer just attraction. It was something darker, more dangerous. She was in too deep. "I need to meet with you. Now." It was reckless, impulsive, and she knew it. But she couldn't help herself. She had to know the truth. About him. About the deal. About everything. She couldn't let herself be controlled any longer. She had planned to walk in, sit down, and have a conversation. Simple, professional. But as soon as she saw him, all of that dissolved. Something shifted in the room. Something that made her realize how little control she truly had. "You called me here, Eliza. You've made your choice." The words hung in the air, laced with a confidence that both infuriated and intrigued her. He wasn't wrong. She had made a choice, hadn't she? She had crossed a line by even calling him. But now, she was in too deep. And as much as she hated to admit it, she didn't know if she could pull herself out. "Eliza." "What do you want from me, Lucas? I'm done playing these games." Her voice trembled just slightly, but she fought to hide it. She needed answers. She needed to understand why she was here, sitting across from him, her life dangling on the edge of whatever twisted path he had planned for her. "I want you to understand that this was never a game, Eliza. You've been a part of something much bigger than you realize, and you're already in the position to change everything." His words sent a shiver down her spine, but she couldn't let herself show it. She needed him to explain. She needed to know just how far the rabbit hole went. She had no idea what she was getting herself into, but there was a part of her that no longer cared. The question wasn't, should I walk away? It was, how do I take control of this situation? It was a simple piece of paper, nothing more than a form, a contract. But in that moment, it might as well have been a weapon. Everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed, could be lost or saved in the next few moments. As her hand closed around the paper, she knew what it meant. She knew this was the point of no return. Signing this, accepting whatever Lucas had planned, meant giving up her last shred of control. But for the first time in weeks, Eliza felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Power. The power to choose, the power to change everything. But the truth was, she didn't know if she was ready for the consequences of that choice. And as she signed her name on the dotted line, she knew she had just made the most reckless decision of her life. The days after Eliza signed the contract passed in a blur. The weight of her decision was heavy, and every moment felt like she was inching closer to something she couldn't escape. She should have felt relief, but instead, a strange sense of dread lingered, gnawing at her every step. She walked into her office that morning, the weight of the world pressing down on her chest. She'd handed over her company's future to Lucas Carter, and yet, nothing about the deal felt right. It was as if she had handed him the keys to her life, and now she was locked in. Her fingers brushed against the screen as the reality of the situation set in. The investors. They had been the ones holding her company together, their support her lifeline. And now, they were calling, just when everything seemed to be slipping from her grasp. "Hello, this is Eliza." The voice on the other end was cold, detached. It was never good when they sounded like that. "Eliza, we need to talk. The merger's off. We're pulling our investment." Her heart sank. The words hit her like a physical blow. The deal she had spent months negotiating, the future of her company, was slipping through her fingers. The investors were pulling out, and she knew it had everything to do with the decisions she'd made in the past week. She should have seen this coming. The investors weren't fools. They had seen the cracks before, and now the foundation had finally crumbled. What had she done? Had her decision to trust Lucas been the catalyst for her downfall? Or had he already been pulling strings in the background? "Eliza, I think you need to see this." Her assistant's face was pale, and the urgency in her voice was unmistakable. Eliza followed her to the monitor, dread pooling in her stomach as the screen lit up. It was a news article. Tech CEO's company in trouble. Investors pull out amidst new scandal. The article laid it out clearly. Rumors of a shady deal, an unapproved merger, and whispers about her connection to Lucas Carter. The scandal had exploded. She was the face of it, and now there was no way to deny it. "I hope you understand now, Eliza. You're in this with me. There's no turning back." His words were cold, matter of fact. No reassurance, no apology. Just a simple declaration of ownership over the situation. And in that moment, Eliza realized the extent of the trap she had walked into. There was no escape. Not now. She had made a reckless choice. A choice that now had consequences far beyond anything she had imagined. The company she had worked so hard to build was unraveling, and Lucas's influence was everywhere. She was caught in a web of his making, and now, she had to find a way to get out before it was too late. Eliza didn't know how long she had been sitting there. The night had fallen, and she was still staring out the window, her thoughts a swirl of frustration, fear, and anger. She had made the wrong choice, and now, everything was slipping away. Another call, another reminder that her world was crumbling around her. She hesitated, then picked up the phone. "Hello?" A familiar voice answered. "Lucas." "Eliza, I'm sure you're aware by now that things are about to get worse, but trust me when I say, this is just the beginning. Stay close and I'll make sure you survive this. But if you run now, you'll lose everything." His words were like ice, cutting through her resolve. He was right. If she tried to leave now, there was nothing left. But if she stayed, if she let him continue to pull the strings, she would lose everything she had worked for anyway. She was trapped. She couldn't let herself be another pawn in his game. She had to take control. But how? She wasn't sure anymore. But one thing was certain. Whatever path she chose, it would cost her everything. The days dragged on in a haze of bad news, rumors, and mounting pressure. Eliza's once vibrant office now felt like a prison, the walls closing in with every passing hour. Her company was on the verge of collapse, the investors pulling back with every phone call, every email. She had been too trusting, too willing to believe that Lucas had her best interests at heart. But now, with every passing moment, that belief felt more like a lie. Her reputation was in ruins. But the worst part? She had no idea how far the conspiracy went. She had been a part of it, yes, but had she been used as a pawn? Was she just a means to an end for Lucas? It was him again. The man who had put her in this position. The man who had promised to make it all right, only to drag her deeper into the mess. She didn't want to pick up. She didn't want to hear his smooth, controlled voice telling her how everything would be okay. But something inside her told her she had no choice. Eliza. What is it, Lucas? His voice was calm, almost too calm, as if he knew something she didn't. As if he was in complete control, and she was just a passenger in this twisted ride. Eliza, I think it's time you knew the truth. I've been protecting you, but now it's your turn to see the bigger picture. The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. Protecting her? Had he been protecting her? Or had he been playing her from the beginning? What truth, Lucas? What exactly are you trying to say? Lucas took a deep breath before continuing, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Eliza, you're caught in the middle of something much bigger than you realize. Your company, your business, was never just about the tech. It's always been about power. Power I've been trying to take back for years. You've been my leverage, my way in. The words hit her like a slap. She had been his leverage? She had trusted him, built everything around him, and now he was telling her she was nothing more than a tool in his game. She felt the anger rise in her chest, but she kept it in check. She couldn't let him see how much his words hurt. So, all of this, everything you said, was just a way to use me? A way to get what you wanted? There was a pause, a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line, and when he finally spoke again, there was no remorse in his voice, only a cold, calculated truth. You were always more valuable to me as an ally, Eliza. But now, the game's changed. I never intended for it to go this far. But now that we're here, I think it's time for you to see what you're really a part of. Eliza's mind raced, her thoughts tumbling over each other like a pile of broken glass. She had been used, not just by Lucas, but by everyone around her. Her investors, her team, even her family. Everyone had played their part in a game she didn't even know she was in. She had been blind, walking into a trap set long before she ever met Lucas. Her eyes scanned the paper, and then it hit her. The connections. The investors she had trusted, the partners she had fought for, all of them were linked in a web of corruption, and Lucas was at the center of it. But so was she. She had been caught in the same net, whether she had known it or not. The truth was inescapable now. She was part of the conspiracy. She had been a pawn, but she didn't have to stay one. There was something she could do, something she could take back from this twisted game. She couldn't undo the past, but she could change the future. She would face him. She would face the consequences of her actions and the world she had willingly stepped into. But this time, she would be the one making the rules. The night was heavy with tension as Eliza sat in her office, her hands gripping the edge of her desk, the weight of Lucas's words still pressed on her chest. But now, it was time to confront him. The truth could no longer be avoided, and neither could the consequences of her decisions. She had to face him. There was no more hiding from the truth. Lucas had been pulling the strings all along, and she had been too blinded by ambition to see it. She couldn't let him control her life anymore. She wouldn't be his pawn. She was going to meet him at his private penthouse, the same place where it had all begun. She had no idea what she would say or what would happen next, but she knew one thing. She couldn't go on like this, not with him manipulating her every move. The drive to his penthouse felt like an eternity, each moment stretching longer than the last. The city lights outside the window blurred into streaks of light, but Eliza's thoughts remained razor-sharp. This confrontation had been building for weeks, and now, it was inevitable. Lucas's penthouse was as cold and imposing as it had been the first time she'd stepped into it. The walls, high ceilings, and vast windows offered nothing but distance. It was a place for power, nothing more, nothing less. And Eliza? She had felt like she was playing by Lucas's rules, but not anymore. Lucas's gaze is sharp, his posture stiff, but there's something else there. something that feels almost like hesitation. She had expected him to be cold, calculating, but tonight, he seemed different. Perhaps it was the storm that had been brewing between them, or perhaps it was the truth that was finally coming to light. His voice was soft, but there was no mistaking the authority in it. He hadn't expected her to come tonight. He hadn't expected her to confront him, and yet, here she was, standing in front of him, ready to strip away the lies and the power he had held over her. "I know what you've done. I know what you've been hiding, and I'm not going to let you control me anymore." She had expected to feel fear, to see him react with anger or frustration. But instead, she felt a strange sense of clarity. The truth had finally been laid bare, and the weight of it wasn't as heavy as she had imagined. "You've been playing a dangerous game, Eliza. But now you've crossed a line you can't uncross. Do you really think you can walk away from this?" His words hit her like a slap, but they didn't faze her. She was past the point of caring about threats, about games. She had made her decision. It was time to take control back. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Lucas. You've been using me, manipulating me, and I'm done being your pawn. If you think I'm going to sit back and let you ruin everything I've worked for, you're wrong." For a moment, there's silence between them. The space between their words seems heavier than it ever has been. Lucas watches her, and for the first time, she sees something flicker in his eyes. It's not anger, not calculation. It's almost respect. "You think you're the only one who's been manipulated here? You think I've been playing you? Eliza, everything you've done, everything you've sacrificed, was all part of a much bigger plan than you could ever understand." His words sent a chill down her spine, but she didn't flinch. For the first time, she was beginning to see the whole picture, the one he had been painting all along. But now, it was her turn to take the brush. "Then let me see the rest of it, Lucas. I'm done playing your games. If I'm in this, then I'm in it on my terms. No more lies. No more secrets." But instead, Lucas steps back, his eyes never leaving hers. His expression hardens once more, the cold mask slipping back into place. He knows she's right. He knows she's not the same woman who had walked into his life weeks ago. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's what scared him the most. "Fine. But remember, Eliza, there are consequences to everything." The finality of his words lingered in the air like a shadow. Eliza didn't need to hear more. She knew what came next. The stakes had never been higher, and now, there was no going back. The days following her confrontation with Lucas were a blur of motion and stillness. Eliza's mind constantly racing, yet her actions seemed more mechanical than ever. The once familiar rhythm of her day-to-day life had fallen away. She was no longer the confident, poised CEO. Now she was a woman trapped in the aftermath of a decision she couldn't undo. She had made the decision to stand up to Lucas, but she hadn't realized just how deep she was already in. The game had begun long before she knew the rules. Now she was left with the tangled web of lies, threats, and broken trust that Lucas had built around her. "Eliza, there's something you need to see." The look on her assistant's face is enough to make Eliza's heart drop. It's never good when the people around you are on edge. She follows her assistant into her office, already feeling the weight of whatever news is about to be dropped on her. Inside the folder were emails, financial reports, and legal documents, all pointing to one terrifying fact. Lucas had been orchestrating her company's downfall from the very beginning. The realization hits her with the force of a punch. Her company wasn't just failing because of poor management or market trends. No, Lucas had been behind it all. The deals, the shady transactions, the investors pulling out, all of it had been planned. But the most chilling part wasn't the way he had manipulated the company's finances or the way he had controlled the flow of information. It was the realization that Eliza had been his partner in all of this. She had unknowingly played her part in a scheme that was far bigger than her, far bigger than her company. And now, there was no way out. She had trusted Lucas. She had trusted him when he promised that he would protect her, that they would rebuild her company together. But in reality, she had been nothing more than a pawn in his game. a pawn who was now at the mercy of his decisions. Standing there in the doorway was someone Eliza had thought was gone for good. Carter Sinclair, the head of her largest competitor. The last time they had met, it had been under terms of cold business rivalry, but now, seeing him here, Eliza had a sinking feeling she was about to discover something even more devastating. "We need to talk, Eliza." Carter's words hung in the air like a challenge, and for a moment, Eliza just stared at him. She knew that whatever he was about to say would change everything again. "I'll get straight to the point, Eliza. Lucas has been playing both sides, and you've been too blind to see it." Her heart skipped a beat. How did Carter know? And what did he mean by playing both sides? This was no longer just about her company. It was about something much more complicated. Something that had been brewing for far longer than she had realized. "These are the same documents I've been sitting on for months, Eliza. But now, I'm offering you a way out. You can join me, or you can stay with Lucas and watch everything you've worked for burn." Eliza couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in, and this wasn't just business anymore. This was personal. Carter was offering her a deal, a chance to take down Lucas, to take control of everything that had been lost. But at what cost? Her mind raced, but her decision was simple. She couldn't stay with Lucas. Not now. Not after everything he had done. But Carter? Could she really trust him? Could she really trust anyone anymore? "What's your plan, Carter? And why should I believe you won't betray me just like Lucas did?" Carter's smile never wavers as he takes a step closer, his voice low and almost conspiratorial. "Because, Eliza, I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust yourself." The decision Eliza faced was one she never imagined she would have to make. Trust Carter, her rival, the man who had spent years plotting against her, or stay with Lucas, the man who had, in her eyes, manipulated her from the start. Both men had a grip on her future, and neither was willing to let go. Her fingers curl around the edge of the desk, the cold metal of the papers beneath her hand like an anchor. But what did Carter mean by that? Was he trying to flatter her? Or was there something deeper, something more personal in his words? It wasn't just business. It had never been just business. She had been caught in a power struggle that was years in the making, and now she had to decide which side of the battle she was on. But Carter's offer? It was tempting. Too tempting. The thought of bringing Lucas down, of taking everything back from him, sent a rush of adrenaline through her veins. "You've been in the game long enough, Eliza. You know that you can't fight alone. Lucas has always had the upper hand, and now you have a chance to level the playing field. You don't have to stay loyal to someone who's been using you." Carter's words sliced through the air, sharp and clear. He was right. She had been used. By Lucas, by the investors, by everyone around her. And now, she had a chance to take back control. She wasn't just fighting for her company anymore. She was fighting for her life, for her freedom. The truth was undeniable now. Lucas had never intended to help her. He had played her from the beginning, and the more she thought about it, the more she realized that everything he had done had been a carefully orchestrated plan. "You want me to join you, Carter, but you're not telling me everything. What's your real plan? Why now? Why offer me this?" Her voice was sharp, cutting through the tension. Carter remained calm, his smirk never wavering. But Eliza could see a flicker of something in his eyes, a momentary crack in the facade. "Because, Eliza, I'm not the only one playing this game. Lucas is the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, but it's not just about him or you or me. It's about a bigger picture, one that none of us can control anymore." A chill ran through her. What was Carter saying? Bigger picture? She didn't know whether to believe him or not, but one thing was certain. This was far from over. The web Lucas had woven around her was only part of the larger story. And now, she was in the middle of it, trapped by forces much larger than herself. "I'm not doing this for you, Carter. I'm doing this for me. If I'm going to take down Lucas, I'm doing it on my terms." Her voice was steady, unwavering. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for. She had made her choice, and the consequences were already unfolding before her eyes. But there was still one thing she didn't know. How deep the conspiracy ran, and how much danger she was truly in. Then let's make sure you get what you need. This is the key to everything. With this, you can take down Lucas and expose everything he's been hiding. But you'll need to move fast. Things are already set in motion. Eliza takes the document, her fingers brushing the edges. The weight of it is heavier than she expected. It's a blueprint, an outline of the conspiracy that Lucas had been orchestrating. Names, dates, connections. All of it was laid out in front of her, a map to Lucas's downfall. But as Eliza leaves Carter's office, the door closing softly behind her, she can't shake the feeling that this is only the beginning. The game had changed, but the rules were still being written. And Lucas? He wasn't going down without a fight. The battle lines had been drawn. Eliza was no longer just a pawn. She was in the game, fully and completely. And Lucas had no idea what was coming for him. The days following her alliance with Carter felt like a slow burn, each step forward leading her deeper into a labyrinth of lies and half-truths. Eliza had made her decision. She was no longer going to let Lucas pull the strings, but she soon realized that her new path was just as treacherous as the one she'd left behind. The walls of her office, once a sanctuary, now feel suffocating. Every document she reads, every plan she devises, brings her closer to Lucas's world. And with each step, she feels herself getting further and further entangled. Carter's plan might expose Lucas, but it's beginning to look like it might expose more than just him. She knows it's coming. The confrontation. Lucas is far too intelligent to stay passive for long. He had to know she was closing in on him. But even as she prepares herself for what's next, she can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. The pieces don't fit, and she's starting to realize that Carter might not be the ally he claims to be. Lucas. There's a moment of silence on the other end of the line, and then Lucas's voice comes through, smooth and composed, like nothing has changed. Eliza, I trust you've been busy. I've heard rumors. You've been making moves, haven't you? His words drip with a quiet amusement, but there's something else, something darker, beneath his tone. It's as if he's been waiting for this, preparing for it, and Eliza realizes, in that instant, that he knew. He knew she was coming for him all along. I'm not here to play your games anymore, Lucas. I know what you've been doing. I know about the deals you've been making, the people you've been using, and I'm done being a part of it. Eliza's heart pounds as she speaks, but there's a new confidence in her voice. She's done hiding, done pretending. The truth is out, and now she's ready to face it head on. You think you can expose me, Eliza? You think you can destroy everything I've built? You're naive. His words hit her like a slap, but they only make her more determined. She's not afraid anymore. Not of him, not of the truth. But something in his voice sends a chill down her spine, a quiet threat that she can't quite shake. I'm not afraid of you, Lucas, not anymore. There's a long pause, and Eliza can hear him take a breath. She waits for the inevitable retaliation, but what comes next is something she wasn't prepared for. You've made a grave mistake, Eliza, but it's not too late to fix it. You can still walk away from this. The words hang in the air between them, an offer, or perhaps a warning. But Eliza knows better. She can't walk away. Not now. Not when she's this close to exposing him. Eliza's pulse races as she stands, walking to the window of her office. The city below looks so far away, but it's the only place she feels safe now. She has everything she needs to take Lucas down, or so she thinks. Unknown. Text. Carter isn't who you think he is. The words hit her like a sucker punch. Carter? The man she had trusted, the man who had promised her a way out, had just been exposed. But by whom? And why? Her mind races as she tries to make sense of it all. Could she have been so blind? Had she fallen into another trap? The pieces are scattered, but the puzzle is far from complete. She doesn't know who to trust anymore. She thought she was taking control, but now, it feels like the game has changed again. Eliza, there's something you need to see. We've been hacked. Someone's releasing all our internal documents online. Her heart stops. The walls are closing in faster than she can react. All the work, all the planning, it's falling apart in front of her eyes. And this time, there's no one she can turn to. No one she can trust. Eliza knows what she has to do. She has to confront Carter. She has to find out what's really going on, and she has to do it now. But as she walks out of her office, the nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach grows stronger. The truth is slipping further and further away from her reach, and she's running out of time. Eliza stood outside Carter's office, her breath shallow, her mind a storm of disbelief. She had trusted him more than anyone else. But now, she couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that everything he had told her was just another layer in a far more sinister game. She had been a pawn in Lucas's game, but was she now a pawn in Carter's too? She had come to confront him, to demand answers, but a part of her already knew that the answers wouldn't come easy. Carter was clever, too clever. He had a way of speaking in riddles, of making his intentions unclear until it was too late. Eliza, I was wondering when you'd finally come to see me. I take it you've had a change of heart? There it was again. The calmness, the confidence that never wavered, no matter what was happening around him. Eliza felt a rush of anger. She wasn't here to placate him, to play his game anymore. Cut the act. Carter, I know you've been playing both sides. I know what you did, and I know what Lucas has been hiding. But I'm not letting you manipulate me anymore. You think I've been manipulating you? No, Eliza. You've always had a choice. You chose to play in a game you didn't understand, and now you're blaming me for it? His words hit her harder than she expected. Was he right? Had she been too naive? Too eager to believe in a world where she could control everything? The thought stung, but she quickly pushed it aside. You knew exactly what you were doing, Carter. You used me just like Lucas did. I should have seen it sooner, but I was blinded by my own ambition. But now, I see you for what you really are. You were always smart, Eliza. That's what I liked about you. But you're still missing the bigger picture. The game was never about me or Lucas. It's about what comes after. What happens when the game ends and you're left standing in the ruins. What does he mean? The words hang in the air, heavy with meaning Eliza can't quite grasp. She feels the pull of his words, but she forces herself to focus. She won't let him manipulate her again. Stop talking in riddles. I'm done with your games, Carter. I want answers, and I want them now. Carter pauses for a moment, studying her carefully. His expression softens, but there's something dangerous in the shift. He knows she's not going to back down. And for the first time, Eliza sees a flicker of something like respect in his eyes, but it's quickly replaced by something darker. You're too late, Eliza. The pieces have already been set in motion. Lucas is already ahead of you, and now, it's your turn to choose. But be careful. You're not just playing for your company anymore. You're playing for your life. The words send a chill down Eliza's spine. What was he saying? Was it a threat or a warning? But before she can process it, Carter rises from his chair, his movements smooth and deliberate. I suggest you think carefully, Eliza. There's still time to walk away. You don't have to play this game. But if you do, well, I'll be waiting. She had come here expecting answers, but all Carter had given her was more questions. And with each passing moment, she realized that she was no closer to the truth than she had been when she first walked into his office. But now, she had no choice but to move forward. She had to know what came next. She had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The game had changed. But Eliza was no longer a pawn, she was a player, and now the stakes were higher than ever. The next few days were a blur of sleepless nights, frantic decisions, and overwhelming pressure. Eliza had done everything in her power to prepare for the showdown that was about to come. She had the evidence to expose Lucas, the leverage to force Carter's hand, but what she didn't have was a clear path forward. There was no turning back now. The walls were closing in on her from every direction, and yet Eliza felt a strange sense of control. She had been running from the truth for too long. But now, the truth had found her, and there was no more room for lies. Meet me at 7. It's time. The message was simple, direct, and as Eliza stared at the words, She felt the weight of everything she had fought for pressing down on her. This was it. The moment where everything would be decided, the ultimate choice. She could expose Lucas for good, but doing so would mean burning bridges with everyone she knew. It could cost her the company. It could cost her everything. Was she ready for this? For the fallout? For the destruction of everything she had worked so hard to build? The life she had known was gone, and there was no going back. But deep down, Eliza knew. This was the moment she had to fight for. No more running. No more hiding. As Eliza makes her way to the meeting place, she can't help but wonder if she's about to make the biggest mistake of her life. Carter had promised her a way out, but had it all been another lie? Could she really trust him? The weight of the choice presses down on her as she steps into the sleek, modern building where Carter has set up the meeting. The cold, metallic interior feels too sterile, too calculated for what is about to happen. Eliza is no longer just a participant in the game. She's become a player, one with the power to either expose everything or lose it all. She walks down the hallway, the echo of her heels against the marble floor growing louder, as if the building itself is closing in on her. Each step feels like a countdown to something monumental, something irreversible. Eliza, I see you've made your choice. The words cut through the air like a sharp knife, but Eliza doesn't flinch. She's done with second-guessing herself. She's done with the doubt. This is the moment where everything changes. Yes, I've made my choice, but I'm not doing this for you, Carter. I'm doing this for me. And I'm not afraid anymore. Carter doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he steps toward her, his eyes studying her with a mixture of admiration and something darker, something Eliza can't quite place. He had underestimated her, but she wasn't going to make the same mistake with him. You think you have control, Eliza. You think you've outplayed me. But the truth is, you're just as trapped as I am. The game has already been decided. Her heart skips a beat, the gravity of his words sinking in. Trapped. Had she been? Was she really in control? Or was this all just another part of Carter's manipulation? The doubt creeps back in, but she pushes it down. I'm not trapped, Carter. You're the one who's been pulling the strings all along. But it ends tonight. You're not getting away with this. For the first time in weeks, Eliza feels a sense of power return to her. She is no longer a victim in this game. She is a player, and she's about to make her move. You've got fire, Eliza. I'll give you that. But you're walking into something much bigger than you can handle. This isn't just about you or me. This is about what's coming next. And if you think exposing me will save you, you're wrong. The threat hangs in the air, and for a moment Eliza wonders if she's made a mistake. But she doesn't let it show. She won't let Carter see any weakness. She has come this far, and now there's no turning back. Then let's see who wins, because I'm done being played. Eliza knows the stakes are higher than ever. The truth, the secrets, the betrayal, it's all coming to a head. But one thing is certain. She's not going to back down. Not now. Not when the game is finally in her hands. In the days that followed, Eliza felt the weight of the decision she had made finally settling in. The game was over, but it had come at a cost. The dust had barely settled on the revelations, the truths exposed, and the betrayals laid bare. What remained, however, was a new beginning, one that Eliza wasn't sure she was ready for. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind, betrayals, confrontations, lies uncovered. But now, she was standing at the edge of something new. She had exposed Lucas. She had taken down Carter, and she had survived. The empire she had once fought so hard to protect was in ruins, but Eliza wasn't the same woman who had built it. She was stronger now, but more than that, she was free. Lucas, the man who had manipulated her, used her, and controlled her every move. The man who had been at the center of everything. But now, the balance had shifted. And now, it was her turn to decide what came next. Lucas. His voice, when it came through, was as smooth and calculated as ever. But there was something different in it, a trace of something like resignation. He had lost. and he knew it. "You've won, Eliza. I've lost everything. You were always the smarter one. The one who could see the bigger picture." The words were like a bitter victory, sweet, but with an aftertaste of something darker. She had beaten him. But had she truly won? Or had she just traded one set of chains for another? It wasn't about winning, Lucas. It was about taking control. "And now, I'm done with you." She ended the call without another word, the silence that followed somehow more powerful than anything they had exchanged. There was no closure, no apology, just an understanding between them. The game was over, and it had changed her forever. The company was gone. The investors had pulled out. Her reputation had been shattered. But in its place, Eliza found something unexpected: freedom. The chains that had bound her to the past were finally broken, and the path ahead was hers to carve. She knew that she had paid a price for everything she had gained, but in the end, the cost had been worth it. She had survived. She had taken back her life, and now it was hers to live. It's time to rebuild, but this time, we do it right. On our terms. For the first time in months, Eliza felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time: hope. The battle had been brutal, but the war wasn't over, and Eliza was ready for whatever came next. This was the beginning of something new, something that was hers and hers alone. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, Eliza was in control, and that, she realized, was all that mattered.